Hola, buenos dias, and welcome to our presentation on today's topic for our EIC 451 assessment. We chose the country of Venezuela for our main point in our studies. Based on this presentation, we'll be able to learn about Venezuela and its various aspects of the daily social life and compare them with our own in terms of similarities and differences between certain aspects of culture with non-cultural bias between each other. And before that, may I ask you, what exactly is Venezuela? Well, Venezuela is located within South America, more specifically between Colombia and also Guyana, and it is also known as the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. With a population of 28 million people, the country is known for its colorful festivities and merrily outgoing and gregarious denizens. Their capital city of Caracas is known for the yearly festivals and parades for their rich history that is deep-rooted with Roman Catholic, which is their state religion. Some of their main attractions including the Angel Falls, the highest waterfall in the world, and the beautiful scenery of the natural gorge of Cuevas de Cabac. Venezuela is a republic government. However, Nicolas Maduro's rise in 2013 led to some civil unrest and also adding the severe hyperinflation issues and crises that befell Venezuelans' lives until now, which became our factor in the study to find out whether Venezuelans' culture and values would change before and after the crisis had ensued. To find out more about the current events and issue that is ongoing in Venezuela is another story for another day. But feel free to read articles about them. We identify their integral aspects and ways in their culture via using both Hofstad's and Hall's cultural dimensions and observe them and their behavior and changes between them when compared to pre and also post 2013 Maduro's crisis. I'll be explaining Venezuela's observable behavior that is seen through Edwards Hall's cultural model. If you want to see the Hofstad sides of the presentation, my partner Wajihah will be covering them. So let us begin, shall we? Hall's cultural model that is observable throughout our study is comprised into three main elements, which is context, personal space, and time. With this, we can point out the key features within each element and provide situations and examples on Venezuela's way of life and customs that is observable and also unconsciously integrated into their community. So let's start first with Venezuela's high context culture. Venezuela is considered a high context culture within Hall's cultural dimension because Venezuelans often use messages in implicit ways and often is being contextually based. And they are always keen on observing body language and behavior to understand the message more. Venezuelans also strict on their time-honored tradition and historical values and would only change little over time. However, noticeable changes that includes how they are adapting towards other culture as they begin to migrate to other countries amid the crisis. For example, among the traditional festivals that they celebrate in Venezuela include, which is Divina Pastora, which is the celebration of Madonna and Child, which is also known as Mary and Jesus, which is an important religious icon in Venezuela. Meanwhile, they also emphasize the concept of mestizo, which is touched on the concept of racial equality, which means that there will be no discrimination between each and every Venezuelans within the country itself. Last but not least, they are also celebrating an ancient and traditional celebration known as Corpus Christi, which is by celebrating the presence of Christ and abolishing the dancing demons through the use of festival that involves individuals wearing costumes that imitate devils. Meanwhile, spectators would throw tomatoes and also fruits to abolish them away to preserve the season from any demons or incursions. And then the second one, we will be touching on Venezuela's personal space. Venezuela is observed as a group or community oriented as a fundamental part and aspect within Venezuela's community. Venezuelans consider that group or community-based achievement is more beneficial as a whole rather than individual achievements. And it is normal that individuals establish multiple social groups, mainly such as family groups, workplace, or even social outgoers, would be a common practice among them. Securities among family and other social group members is a priority because by keeping them safe and sound would give them much more secure benefit towards the whole group and team. This shows that Venezuelans is committed into establishing long-term relationship. For example, Venezuelans always keeping a good family circle, which means they would always keep their families side by side and even contact with other family members to ensure that their family are always safe and sound. Meanwhile, when locals offer you a cup of coffee, it usually shows that it is a sign of welcoming, which means that they are already trying to accept you as a part of their community. Last but not least, Venezuelans also practice the exchange of gifts and also giving away presents to foreigners and friends and even strangers alike to increase or even to create a much more sensible environment that will enforce friendliness. As you can see here, in Caracas, a group of women that is going out unchaperoned at night is not recommendable and would usually need some kind of a family member to accompany them. Last but not least is Venezuela's perception of time. Venezuela's polychronic culture is evident throughout our study. Venezuelans are very flexible with time management and are adaptable when changing their schedule pattern. They are laid back and would balance between work and social life. However, Venezuelans who pursue in their desires and often sees leisure time as a vital necessity in their lifestyle. For example, Venezuela are often celebrating social parades to encourage social interaction and creating a quality family time among social group members. For example here, among the example of time that we can see in Venezuela is that public transport would mostly be eased with time and not restricted towards fixed schedule, which means that bus will arrive on time or not on time, enabling you to become more prepared and ready. Then, there are also certain parts of etiquette. For example, a dining etiquette in Venezuela is that when someone invited you to a dinner at a certain time point, you must arrive later than the time that is being mentioned by the one who invited you, because if you come too early, it will be considered as too sudden or even symbolizes as greed by most Venezuelans. And then, Venezuelans are often and mostly being characterized by their colorful festivities, which include the Fiesta of Di San Juan and also the National Day Parade, which they use to actually keeping their family members much more entertained during this crisis. And it also gives them a sense of security and also enforce the relationship between and also each social group members. And with those elements that we got sorted out in our study, we can actually now compare between Malaysia and also Venezuela's cultural findings, which we found out that we actually share certain commonalities in features that Venezuela possesses. For example, number one, Malaysians' high context culture shows that we also value old and deep-rooted traditions and customs such as open house and gotong royong cultures that brings people together. Malaysia's touch on messages that rely on body language and behavior is also a common practice. We also appreciate historical values such as celebrating festivities and national independence. For example here, we always often and reinforce the concept of One Malaysia, which is a core value that reinforces racial equality between Malays, Indian, Chinese, Bumiputras, and etc. We also initiate open house so that we could actually reinforce and also create a sense of tradition that we made through our time. And then the second one, Malaysia is also known for its group and community-based oriented practice that is highly ingrained within the Malaysian community and their daily lives, such as forming bonds with family, at workplace, and social activities. Malaysians are committed at developing long-term relationship as it is mutually being adopted at an early age to create a sense of security and adhere to religious practice. Malaysians also address different age and position within the group to show respect. For example here, the greeting culture that we use in Malaysia, for example, as selamat pagi, selamat datang, terima kasih, sama-sama, is used to show that how we could actually show our respect towards each individuals as equals, and also addressing several key features towards how we negotiate and communicate among each Malaysians. And last but not least, Malaysians' polychronic feature is also noticeable within their context. Often considered as flexible and adaptable, Malaysians didn't see the need to rush things out and often enjoy their moment. However, pursuing desires is strictly within the scope of what religion is permitted, and often Malaysians would actually try to pursue ambition to reach a certain goal. For example, on how Malaysian parents are actually nurturing their child to become more academically active, to give them a better sense of future planning, and also to give them a better prospects of working conditions. For example here, a family bond that is created between parents and their child is mostly being taught through religious means and also through academic means to give the children much more sense of security and reliance towards their parents. And with the open house aspect, this shows that Malaysians are a little bit laid back in time management, often encouraging people to gather together and perform social interactions. So in conclusion, an insight towards the cultural aspect within Venezuela is interesting to say the least throughout our study. Identifying the cultural elements enable us to observe how changes would be for the Venezuelans in the aftermath of the 2013 crisis. Cross-comparing with Malaysian culture shows how much similarities that they have in common. Both changes that take place between both countries shows how people would try to change themselves to a new norm despite the difficulties. So that is all that I could present on my view on Hall's cultural dimension towards Venezuela. I hope with the presentation that we have been given to you, it would benefit both us and the viewers so that we could actually learn something new from this experience overall. So, Assalamualaikum and Chola.